Hello, brothers and sisters. How are we today? Welcome to the next episode of the Mental Funkyverse episode. It's probably not going to be that long, but so I wanted to just jump on really and have a quick conversation about the AI bubble. So what's the AI bubble? For those of you who are versed in financial services and financial operations, stocks, shares, all the rest to do with pieces of paper with pictures on it, there are these things called bubbles, which are essentially where there is hype and anticipation around a particular product, asset, thing in the market. And when people begin to get really, really excited en masse, and then the hype gets too big, and it overbuilds and overbuilds and overbuilds. And so what ends up happening is that the assets in question become overvalued. The bigger the hype, the bigger the overvalue. And eventually, according to the laws of both finance and mathematics, and just reality, really, those bubbles have to pop. They will. They eventually. Everything has to balance out, level out eventually. So you have like the housing bubbles, 2008 financial crash. That was based on a mortgage bubble. What was it? What's the specific term for it now? It was a bubble based on very high risk mortgages, basically. Essentially, they were just doling out mortgages left, right, and centre to people who clearly were a very high risk and were more than likely to never really actually pay back, or to pay the money into the system that they were expecting to receive over the course of those payments. And so there was a lot more to the 2008 financial crisis. There was a lot more aspects to it. There was a lot more structure to it, contributing factors and so on and so forth. But the thing that really popped and the core of it was the substandard mortgage, the something mortgage market that popped. So that's a classic one that almost everybody watching this now will remember to some degree or another. The one before that, the big one before that, of course, was the dot-com bubble, which burst properly, if I remember correctly. It kind of officially burst good and proper in it was like 2001. I want to say 2001. That's when the dot-com bubble really, really, really crashed. And 9/11 exactly didn't really exactly help with that, because so it was around about that time, because the share prices of some of the big companies at the time, Amazon, Google, etc., didn't begin to start rising again and increasing in value till around about beginning to mid 2002. So the bubble we are allegedly in right now is the AI bubble. I say allegedly because the question remains, is it a bubble or is it not a bubble? Now, AI is very unique in this because there's never really been an asset like it. There's never really been a technology and innovation. There's never been the internet is the closest comparable thing we have, but we only can really say that it's comparable to it because it's digital. In terms of impact and functionality, it's, which is quite crazy to say, considering what I'm about to say is crazy to say, considering how impactful and how meaningful and how important the internet has become to us on an individual basis in our individual lives, as well as how intrinsically interwoven it is within the entire infrastructure of the globe at this point. So, and that's taken internet went online a while ago, but from the moment it sort of became commercially available to like the peons, the minions, the average Joe on the street, was late 90s, mid to late 90s. So if we just say the mid 90s, 95, when it started to trickle in, and then from there we were talking 30 years. So in 30 years we went from having basically no internet. Digital interconnectivity existed, but it existed between financial institutions, governments, big companies and corporations, but to the man on the street it was non-existent. To now, it's almost considered a human right by some people. Some people actually consider access to the internet on a par with food, water, shelter. Maybe. I suppose you could make an argument for that, especially if you were arguing that it's essential to exist in a modern world. But that's about it, really. I think that's the only avenue of argument you could make for that. However, the AI bubble, or the AI as a technology, is once you begin to understand the potential of it, what it is currently doing, and what it is growing ever more capable of doing, the issues it is being put to and the issues that it will be put to in the future, socioeconomic, scientific, political, etc., etc., etc. The potential is staggering beyond most people's ability to even conceive of it. Which is why the idea that we're in an AI bubble and that bubble will burst anytime soon, I am very dubious about. Because the vast majority of people, like the high 90th percentile of people, haven't really got much of any clue about what AI is. They know it exists. Obviously, most people have by now heard of AI and are hearing things here, everywhere. But the vast majority don't look into it too deeply. The people that do use it will use it fleetingly, or they'll use it for some of the most basic menial things, instead of using it for, extremely serious things, or extremely productive things, or extremely complex things, or to solve complex problems. They're using it they're using it as a search engine, they're using it as a fact finder. It's just being very, very underused. It's like the toaster in Red Dwarf. For those people who aren't British, and for those people who are British but aren't my age, there was a television show in the late 80s and early 90s called Red Dwarf. It was a comedy sci-fi program. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's some classic early 90s humour, British humour. But there's a toaster. In the first season, there was, in the protagonist's cabin, there was this toaster with an AI in it. And the AI was always moaning and it would say, oh, I could cure cancer, I could restructure society, I could feed I could make sure that nobody ever starves again, but all they ever want from me is toast. And that's his main complaint throughout the whole thing. It's super powerful AI, but it's in a toaster, and all anybody ever really wants of it is just toast. All people really use it for is toast. And it's very apt for kind of where AI is at the moment and what people are using AI for now. They're just making toast with it. They haven't really conceptualized or conceived or yet the potential it has and how much you can leverage it in so many aspects of life. And the other thing about AI, there was a saying that developed very early on in the emergence of AI back in the heady days of GPT-3 and 3.5. And that saying was, the AI that you are currently using is as bad as it's going to get. The AI that you are currently using is as bad as it is going to get. Which means, basically, it's always improving. It's always getting better. It will never become worse than what it is now. It will be what it is now, and then better as time goes by. And that doesn't stop. That keeps increasing. And it's not linear. It's exponential. So that improvement is just makes bigger and bigger leaps each time in its capability, in its capacity, what it can do. Which is, to my mind, what undermines the bubble concept. Because everybody is seeing it as an asset that is impacting the world, that is making massive waves, that is already beginning to be implemented in some pretty, what would you call them, intrinsic aspects of the day-to-day infrastructure of society. And that's not going to stop. That's only going to increase. So it's not just AI that's the worst it's going to get, but the application of AI into society is as low as it's going to be. It's only going to get more. It's only going to increase over time. The AI is going to get better. The distribution of that AI into society, into the infrastructure, is only going to increase. Once robotics gets fed into that as well, that's another factor. The point is everything's on the increase exponentially. So, is this a bubble? Or is this a bubble that's going to pop anytime soon? Probably not. Probably not. The only way I could see this bubble popping is if something comes in and completely undermines the hype, or there is hype fatigue. That's a possibility I've considered, is that every like month now there's a big leap. At one point it was getting like there was a jump almost every week. But if we only factor in the big leaps, like the really, really big jumps, like for example the jump from 3.5 to 4 was a really big jump in capacity and capability. Now, if you're listening to this and you don't use AI, or you weren't using AI then, back in 22, 23, then you won't know what I'm talking about probably, or you won't have experienced it for yourself. But I was using GPT very, very early on, right at the beginning really, of its commercial distribution. When GPT went from 3.5 to 4, its reasoning ability, its computation ability, its And at that time, there was no agentic AI, so like there was sort of like bits of agentic stuff you could do if you had a plugin to plug it into, so that the AI could work through that to do something. But all that was then able to start really coming online, and the first creeping of what we would now come to know as fully agentic AI, i.e. AI that can actually do stuff for you, can actually, write programs, can install stuff, can etc. etc. That was the beginnings of it. GPT-4, then you could have plugins, and then those plugins would give that sort of similar functionality. It was the birth of that, really. And it was a big leap, massive leap. And the hype that created was like, wow. And then there wasn't really a massive leap again until GPT 5.2, I think it was. 5.2. Or GPT-5. Now, we've recently had a big jump, big leap with the series of Fable, Mythos, GPT 5.6. And that's generated another injection of hype. These big leaps inject hype. They inject awe and imagination to those who are using it and who are just on the sidelines watching it being used by other people. So hype fatigue, in my mind, well, as I've theorized it, is essentially when it gets to the stage where it doesn't really matter how big a leap in capacity it is. It's just there's been so much hype now. It's just the physical body has been now drained of the energy to be even hyped anymore. It's like, oh yeah, another big leap. But it's almost to the point where big leaps become a normalized sensation. Like we get used to. There's many things the human being can become used to over time, quickly. There's a possibility that we could become acclimatized to and used to these big leaps, and then they no longer become. They're no longer considered in the light of being big leaps. They're now considered in the light of being just normal progression, standard progression. Nothing special, nothing to see here. Even though in reality, every big leap that happens in AI is huge. It's just another big step towards abundance economy, abundance society, solving some of the biggest issues, biggest questions and explorations in physics, biology, the sciences in general, all sorts of things. Now, all of that being said, the counter argument for yes, there is a bubble and it will pop, and it will pop soonish, is actually when we go back and look at the internet again as the case point and example, the closest comparison we have to anything like this. Internet comes online, starts becoming publicly available in the mid-90s. The bubble begins to expand because intelligent people at the time, and certainly people who tended to think in a longer view, say years, even decades, some of us were even are generational thinkers. But even just people who were thinking in years could see that the internet was going to be a huge thing, that everything was pointing towards that the entirety of society was going to be intrinsically reliant on the internet, and that the infrastructure for that was only going to carry on growing to the point where internet was everywhere. And so it was a no-brainer to invest in it. But there is such a thing as being too early, even though you're right. And many, many people got burnt in the dot-com crash, not because they ran in and invested as it was getting really high. They bought high and then panicked when it crashed and sold low, although that did happen. Many of the people who got really burnt were the people who invested solidly early, but too early. So they might have made money going up, but unless they cashed out at the top, there you go, went back down to the bottom again. And then if they lost faith in it, or they felt too butt hurt over the fact that they just lost all that money, and then they sold out, then they missed the actual implementation and the huge rollout of the internet that did naturally follow after that. So that teaches us a lesson, or that shows us a pattern. That shows us a potentiality that could occur with AI. It could be that many of the people who are investing in AI right now, who have been for the last couple of years, have been too early. And even though, yes, AI is going to be, just like the internet, intrinsically part of all of modern society, globally, around the world, and if Elon has his way, beyond, out into space. But let's just keep it to Earth for now. And I believe that too. I believe that it's bigger than the internet. It's going to be much, much bigger than the internet in terms of. But is there going to be a bubble pop and a crash before that, just as there was with the internet? Maybe. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I could easily see the answer being no, simply because of the speed and the exponential increase in its capability and capacity. So that isn't just for companies and corporations and businesses. That's for individuals like you and me. Because as the frontier models go up, down here, the free open source models that anybody can get and use and download, and if you've got a powerful enough system, run it off your own computer, they are rising up with them and catching up, and the gap between the two is steadily closing. So it's really for everyone. And for those who are savvy enough to take it and then begin to really do productive stuff with it, to really just apply it to anything and everything in their life that they are trying to build, create, generate, maintain, they will immediately begin to see the results of that as it gets leveraged. And as the capacities increase, the leverage payoff increases as well. Productivity increases, efficiency increases, cost decreases, overheads decrease. And so we move very, very faster and faster and faster, ever increasing paces towards that place where, I mean, you could call it whatever you want, Star Trek, future, abundance, economy. I always like to refer to Ian M. Banks and the Culture series, sci-fi series. If you've not read it, I highly recommend it. That to me is one of the, well, I would say that for me personally is how I envision the way Ian M. Banks in that series lays out and describes the relationship between superintelligent AI and biological beings, humans, is pretty much how I envision the relationship between AI and humans unfolding and coming into, and the universe, the world, the universe, the galaxy he paints, the vision he paints in that series of multiplanetary civilization in symbiosis and synergy with AI, working cooperatively, is exactly how I see it. And for me, it's only it's inevitable that we're going to get there. It's only a matter of time. It's not if, it's when. Now the trajectory to that, seemingly right now, is unshakable, unstoppable. It's not showing any signs of slowing down. It's only showing signs of increasing. And that increase is capability. And that capability is productivity and applicability. And as soon as you start to introduce the automation side of that, robotics, you begin to magnify that even more. So there's every chance that AI could potentially, in terms of the stock markets and the financial systems and all of this lot, and there's a chance it could hit escape velocity. That it could be its improvements and its applications could be so big and so fat and be applied so quickly and so fast that the bubble doesn't have time to pop. There's just no time for it to pop, because it just keeps growing and then keeps giving back in productivity from that growth, which is enough to keep offsetting the bubble until the point where the bubble doesn't collapse. It just simply ceases to exist, because there is the hype fades away, and it's no longer hype. It's now the actually applied application. It's the application of AI into every facet of life and society. So it just merges in, and that bubble never pops. It just disappears. Or it becomes a stable core part of the market, if there is even still a market. But this is the thing. One of the biggest ironies of all of this is that the trajectory of the development of AI and where it can be used, how and where it can be used, is pushing us faster and more inevitably towards an abundance future. And for those who are wondering, what's an abundance future? It's a future where there's no need for money anymore. There's no requirement for currency, or those kinds of. You will no longer need to pay to live. You no longer need to pay to eat. You no longer need to pay to have somewhere safe and comfortable to sleep. You no longer need to pay to travel somewhere. All of the immediate needs and comforts of life are simply provided for, because there is an overabundance of capacity, resources, productivity. So servicing the basic and higher comfort needs of human beings becomes trivial. And the moment it becomes trivial, money no longer needs to exist, or what we know, or what most people understand and know as money. It's currency, really. And so, I mean, that's a debate for another video and a discussion for another video. Will there still be such a thing as forms of exchange? Probably. Because human beings like playing those kinds of games. At least for a certain period of time, even after we enter into an abundance state. There probably still will be people who exchange, but it will more than likely be for things like extreme luxuries, or actually in a game setting. You know what I mean? It's like where the things you exchange and buy and use are for like sports, games, things that don't necessarily have or don't have any necessary requirement for life, and to just live a happy, healthy life as a human being. But If it's for something for like sports, extreme pleasure, or extreme innovation. I need way more than the resources the average person needs, because I've got this idea and I'm going to be developing that and I want to build that, so I need more than these resources. Okay, well then, if that's available, you'll probably be able to have it. If it's like, well, you're going to be putting some strain on the distribution of resources around the planet by tapping into those, depending on how big that idea is, that project is. There would have to be potentially some kind of exchange for that. But to live, to just eat, be sheltered, to travel, no, those things will be trivial. I am more than confident that my currently living sons and any future children I may be blessed with will know a world where the idea that you would have to pay to eat, pay to have somewhere safe to be sheltered, pay to travel. What? That's going to be a mind fuck for them. It's going to be a mind blow for them. They're going to be like, what? You had to pay? So you had to go and do things for other people. Sometimes those people were quite nasty people, like dickheads. And you had to do things for them in order to get pieces of paper with pictures on them so that you could exchange that in order to just eat and to have somewhere to sleep that's warm and safe, or in Cambodia's case, cool and safe. What? That's going to be a mind fuck for them. For future generations, they're going to be like, what? That's mad. How barbaric is that? How savage is that? You mean all those resources were just already there? They just needed to, all they needed to do was to be intelligently distributed, intelligently administered to, and distributed around. But that didn't happen. Or the only time any resources were ever moved from one place to another, regardless of need, was dependent on whether one or more parties had X amount of pieces of paper with pictures on them. What? That's crazy. That's going to be it's my attitude now, but that's definitely going to be the attitude of future generations going forward. And that's going to be in part because of AI, automation, robotics automation, and space travel. And energy, of course. Apparently fusion's been invented now, or has been allowed to be started to be deployed. First fusion generators and reactors. So we're very close now to reaching that stage in our civilizational development where energy will be pennies, or basically free or basically free. Or it'll get to the point where it's dirt cheap, so cheap that you won't worry about using it in huge amounts, way higher amounts than we use now. But then we'll eventually be just free. It'll just be free, and there'll just be restrictions on the amount of energy you can use for any one given task, project, or whatever. You know, if you're just an average Joe living on a street in the UK, for example, why do you need 2 gigawatts of energy? You know, there would be a question mark on that, and quite a valid one. But if you were a village and you wanted to install, or you were working on this piece of technology, or you wanted to do this really deep infrastructure project. Okay, now I can understand you need 2 gigawatts of energy. Is it megawatts? Anyway, doesn't matter. I always forget the difference between giga and mega. A lot. Anyway. So, can we say definitively that there is an AI bubble? Yes. Yes, there is an AI bubble. Because currently there are many companies, corporations out there whose stocks and assets are basically, they're so overpriced that, you know, I think it's 41 to 1. 41 to 1. So for every dollar you invest, you have to hope that over the coming time, a certain time period, the company is going to get profitable enough to make 40 times more than they're currently making in order to then meet the expectation of that valuation. Again, by the way, I'm not a financial advisor. So, you know, take everything I say with a pinch of salt in this. I'm just somebody who watches these things very carefully. So in that regard, yes, there is a bubble. There is an overhype. There is an overvaluation for now, for this time period. 2 years from now, that would be an undervaluation. I'm more than positive. 2 years from now, what is now being considered an extreme overvaluation will be a very low number. It will be like it will be very undervalued. But then that leads to point 2. So we have a bubble, but point 2 is it going to pop? Will that bubble pop? Because if that bubble does pop, then yeah, that overvaluation is going to sting a lot of people and cause a lot of issues. But if, as I've laid out, the acceleration of AI's capacity and capability combined with robotics just keeps pushing the boundaries of what we are able to do, combined with ever greater levels of energy access, comes together and keeps going on the trajectory it's going, there is every possibility that it will escape velocity, the bubble, the usual pattern, and break free of it. Then becomes so intrinsically tied into our infrastructure, it's as natural and as, what's the term, considered to be a given as the internet is today in every aspect of life. At which point, the valuations which are currently considered overvalued will be very undervalued, and the final value on it will be huge. But if the bubble does pop, then it will cause issues, sting a lot of people, but it won't stop the progression of AI. AI will still carry on developing and getting more and more capable. It will still continue to, just as the internet did. The dot-com bubble popped, but the internet didn't turn off. It didn't collapse the whole thing, and it still kept getting built out, and spread around the world, and it is what it is today. Now, I wish I could be a bit more conclusive for you. I wish I could say, I am a financial advisor and I am a market analyst expert, and so therefore you should do this because this is definitely going to happen. Can't say it. I can't say that. All I can tell you is that there is a bubble. That much is true. All I can do is speak to that bubble and the nature of it, as I have just done, and lay out for you my projections of where it may go. And for me, it's two. It's two. Clear. Two very distinct ones. Bubble pops. We have a repeat of the .com situation. Well, the bubble doesn't pop because it doesn't get a chance to, because the technology just goes so far ahead, it just outstrips everything else. And then by the time the markets do get a moment to reshuffle things, we don't need markets anymore because we now have the technology to implement an abundance society. I suppose what I could say is that if it does follow the .com pattern, for those who haven't invested yet into the AI world, then when that bubble pops, that's great news. It's great news for you, because at that point you'll be able to say, oh, okay, so this is doing what the .com did, which means now all I've got to do is just wait a few months for the dust to settle, then start investing. So just like people way back then, the .com bubble crashed, and then it was those who started reinvesting after the dust settled into that in 2001, 2, 3. Say if you bought Amazon, if you then went in and invested in Amazon then at 2002, 2003, after the dust had settled from the .com crashed, then you'd be laughing now. Absolutely, you'd be laughing all the way to the bank, as they say. So if this bubble pops definitively in a way that's, self-evident, it was a bubble and it now has popped, that's great news. If you haven't invested yet, or you've been hesitant to invest and you've been holding back, that's jackpot day, because you're like, now I can invest, because the hype's gone now. There will be a concerted effort to make to stabilize it, and to then make sure that the growth going through there is more realistic. It will be thought of more realistically by most people's minds, because they've been stung now. And then that will be the time to invest. If you have invested in already and you're heavily invested in it, what can I say to you? You've basically got two choices. You can wait until you're into juicy profits already. I don't know, whatever your number is, 20, 30, 40, 50%, whatever, of your initial investment, and then pull it out. So you've made your profit, and then pull out in anticipation of a bubble pop, to then reinvest afterwards. Or you could gamble that AI will hit escape velocity and you'll get back your investments with tons on top of that. But it won't matter anyway, because even if you become a billionaire off it, we're moving to a world where money won't matter. I think that's the point I'm going to land my plane on and end this with. That should be the deepest consideration in your mind right now. And I might even do a separate video specifically talking about abundance technology, abundance economy, and what that might look like and how it might play out. But it is coming. It is inevitable. And because the technology trends and the application of the increase in that technology's capacity and capability is inevitable. It's not going to stop. It ain't stopping for you, me, or anyone. We're going to keep going, and at some point it will hit the point where food, water, shelter, all this stuff is trivial. At which point money, currency as we know it today, ostensibly becomes irrelevant, pointless. So consider that. Think about that. I'm optimistic. I think that's coming in a few years' time. 4 tops, I'd say. By 2030, absolute max 2030. But that, for me, for some people, that's a bare minimum. Some people don't think that the abundance economy is going to be coming until 45, 50. 2045, 50. I think that's ridiculously conservative and ridiculously pessimistic. I accept that I am hyper optimistic when it comes to this stuff. But either way, I think I can safely say it's not going to be another generation. It's time before we move into abundance economy. Then the big question comes: what is valuable then? What do you do with your time? What is valuable now? At least you'll have a lot more time to think about it without worry, concern, or stress, or because all that pressure will be released off you. And you'll just be left there to ponder the question. Okay, well, what do I do now? I get fed every day, I get sheltered, I can travel wherever I want to now. It doesn't cost me anything. What do I do? What's valuable? What's valuable to me? What's valuable to other people? What's just valuable, full stop? These are the questions that we're going to be faced with. Many of us are already faced with that, even though it hasn't come yet, because we've been looking towards this and building towards this and knowing this has been coming for a while, so we've been giving this consideration for a while. But for a lot of people, it's not even been a concept. When you try and even broach the concept with most people of an economy or that is abundant, where money is no longer a need, never is there a suggestion or a concept that is met with such resistance and oftentimes violent, aggressive, or mocking, cynical. That'll never happen. It's the one. There's been many things throughout my life as a truther and a quote-unquote conspiracy theorist, or whatever you want to call me, where I've come across many reactions for some of the things I've said, and trying to express some of the things I've come to learn and I've explored and I've attempted to share with people. And so I've met these reactions and these resistances on many fronts for many reasons. But one of the biggest pushbacks, one of the biggest resistances that I meet is to this concept or idea of an abundance economy. The idea that you don't need money, we never really have needed money, but that we're approaching a point where there will be no excuse as to why we have money still. It will just be absurd and obscene. It already is absurd and obscene, but it will become self-evidently so in the face of the technology which is available. And for many people, that's going to be the moment. That's going to be the moment they now are confronted with it and think about it, and they're going to have to answer the question, well, what do I do now? What's valuable? What's meaningful? And people like myself who've been looking for this for, at least 2 decades now, looking towards this and thinking about this for at least 2 decades, I already know what I'm going to be doing. I already know what an array of the things that I will certainly be attempting to do or whatever. So, not sure how long this has gone on for now, but I'm going to round it up Yeah. So the takeaways from this video: bubble, no bubble; bubble pop, no bubble pop. And what do we do when all of this technology means we no longer have to slave away doing something that we don't want to do or don't like doing for somebody we don't like, in order to just pay the bills and feed ourselves? Questions to consider. And in this time right now, these are questions we should be considering right now, for now. Get ahead of the curve, people. Get ahead of the curve, if you're not already. Okay, so thank you for listening up to now. I hope it was informative, enlightening, or at the very least entertaining, and gave you some food for thought. So thank you for listening up to now. If you have, I've been Michael Woolston. Thank you for coming to the Mental Funkyverse, and until next time, love, light, and much gratitude to you all.